I was one of the youngest ever to pass that test in Des Moines, Iowa at age 22. But I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, started my apprenticeship at age 18 after having been taught brush lettering since the 9th grade. So I entered my apprenticeship with a running start and didn't have to sweep the floor, mix the paint, clean the brushes, do all that kind of stuff. My boss realized that I had the brush skills to do this kind of work. So he set me to work immediately. He says, yeah, we can use you. He didn't pay me much, and I was just doing trace-offs, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use the thin bond paper to see the layout underneath. So you don't really need great brush skills to follow this formula, but the formula is part of the culture. There's a whole separate unknown culture for grocery store and supermarket paper signs. The supermarket signs usually had to be done in large quantities, so they were silkscreen, usually in one color. And you could tell the silkscreen versions because the counters of the O were stencil, okay? They had ties, okay? Paper stencils, and also some reverses. Imagine that a big price says $1 in white on a blue background. Well, that $1 was all linked together, put into the rectangle, and then it was silkscreened so that it was basically a white figure on a blue background. You can't do that very well if you're brush lettering because it just takes so much time. So sometimes I separate the item from the price. Can you all see back there? And the reason I do that is it makes it easy to mix and match. But I should also say that I do this for the family store, so there's no risk of me losing a client by giving the client so many different item names and so many different prices that he can pretty much take over my business and do the mixing and matching on his own. So if you're going to get into the paper sign business, do it as a service where you keep all of the parts and you just go to the location once a week and assemble the parts, okay? The customer doesn't have to know what this thing is about. The customer really wants to draw in clientele that will shop the loss leaders. The loss leaders are the items in the store that are sold at a loss, basically. And that covers most of the perishables. Meat, dairy, produce, that kind of thing. Now, my parents got into the grocery business the same year I graduated from high school and had already learned this in the shop, so they put me to work right away, and not for pay. So I got lots and lots of practice. These days, I like to do, maybe 100 a year, but I used to do hundreds a year. So I'm, conservatively speaking, in the thousands as lifetime output, signs like this. We're not going to do two-part signs today. I'm just using these as illustrations. So there are a lot of do's and don'ts in the culture. And very, very few people, especially on YouTube, who are demonstrating on paper signs, all this kind of stuff, I taught myself, they are not part of the culture. They are just complete foreigners. They do so many things wrong, and I'm going to tell you the do's and the don'ts. Okay, so take notes here. Just cover the culture, what looks right and what doesn't. It also has to do with production techniques and making everything really, really efficient. And we used to do these, mass produce them, okay, working shoulder to shoulder. I get to go first doing the big prices, okay. Larry comes next, he does the items, okay. And then Randy comes next and with the red and does. And we just go down the easel, 32 feet, okay, 4x8s, end to end to end. And it is a production thing. And this is really good for beginners to get detached, emotionally detached from the work. So you just don't give a damn after a while, okay? You're cranking these things out and you're not getting too fussy. If you get too fussy, you won't make money. That's all there is to it. And you can't make a living at this. Now, if you just want to do it as a hobby, go for it, Get as fancy with outlines, shades, whatever. But in the culture, we do not stack letters. We don't go A, B, C. We don't do B-A-N-A-N-A-S for bananas. That's ridiculous, okay? You see somebody on YouTube doing that, forget about them, okay? They are not part of the culture. They are not making money at this, guaranteed. The next thing you don't do is add serifs to your letters. No, we use lineals or Gothics, okay? That is a single stroke letter that has pretty much the same weight all the way around. You see, there are no thicks and thins in these letters. Now, they can be casual, or they can be a little bit more formal, like this red lettering, which is also single stroke. But you don't mess around with formal Roman letters. It takes too much time to do that. Next thing, no shading. That is not part of the culture. No shades on the letter. Everyone know what I mean by a shade? Okay? It makes the letter look three-dimensional. Takes too much time. You don't do it. Just stay away from it. If the boss came in and caught you shading a letter, you know, you've been warned once. Next time, you're out. Stencils. You don't want those ties showing to make it look like it was silk screened as opposed to hand painted, because hand painted has more appeal. And finally, reverses. They just take too much time to cut in a letter, to form the background, leaving only the white of the paper showing the number or the letter. Now, what we do use a lot, abbreviations. Okay? You see how much more efficient it is to say spuds than potatoes. Okay. Our misted or spotted backgrounds, that's if you want, say, red letters on a field of yellow. You use a spray can. Don't bother brushing it in, okay? Just done, as fast as you can. Spotted backgrounds can also be done with a house painting brush. You know, just splash some yellow on the background, let that dry, and then put your color on top. Now, I like to use a combination of Roman, upright, okay, not thick and thin, upright letters in combination with slanted. Example, upright and slanted. You see that? There. And finally, when you put these signs up, don't do this. You'll tear the sign when you take it down. Do not put the tape diagonally across the corner of the paper. And that's one of the first things you should know when you tape your paper to the easel. Don't go this way. No 45-degree angles. Okay? Now, the grocery business is quite interesting, and I learned it in my adult years, thanks to the fact that my parents ran the grocery store, mom and pop shop for 30 years, and it actually became the size of a supermarket. And my brother continues in the family business, so when I visit there from time to time, I'll just, for practice, do a batch of a dozen paper banners for the front windows. Everybody knows I'm in town. Oh, John's back. Look, the store looks like a grocery store. Well, you have to understand that 10 cents is a very low-cost item. There's hardly any item in the store that's single digit. Okay, 9 cents a pound, I think, for onions, maybe 15, 20 years ago. That's the last time I put a single digit on a sign. So we can safely say, double that, and say that 20 cents is about your lowest price in the store for any given item, and $20 is about tops. It hardly ever goes up to $100 in a grocery store. Now, a case of wine, okay, but that's in a wine liquor store. That isn't a food stuff. I'm talking about foodstuffs. Again, the perishables. Produce, loss leader. Meat, highly perishable. Okay, if you can't sell it today, you have to take it home and eat it. The milk has to be thrown out if it's past the expiration date. All of these things are constant concerns. So the more people you can get into the store to buy those perishable goods, the more effective the grocery store is. It runs more smoothly. They get the merchandise sold. They don't have to waste it. And it comes down to making the price big. Now here I've drawn 4 rectangles. Okay. Consider that these would be the dollar amounts and these would be the cents amounts. So this is tens and singles and then dimes and pennies, just like I have over here. Okay. Your 1 is naturally your narrowest character. And on the handouts, I've superimposed the larger figures on pages that you can trace off. And I'll get to that in just a minute. I want to explain how the price is done and how much of the format is devoted to the price. Normally, about a half of the usable area, after you've drawn in your margins, half of that layout area, or up to 60%, is for the price. The price has to be read from across the parking lot, across the street. Remember that, you know, the motor car essentially is what made the supermarkets successful as a business. There were supermarkets as long ago as, I think, 1916. There was a pretty successful chain around 1930, but once the Depression hit, supermarkets didn't do well. It was after the Second World War and the suburban economy, every family had a car, that they could go around and do their shopping at one location. And that's when supermarkets started to use these huge display windows for paper signs. And no longer were show card writers in that business, because the show card writer works on a small scale. A show card writer does little price tickets for windows, okay? Small scale things. Whereas a paper banner producer, this is more like a sign shop or a manufacturing type of business where it can be done large scale production, mass produced, and you need a lot of area to do this. So we have a maximum of 2 spaces for the dollar amount and 2 spaces for the cent amount. Now, we never use just 1 for the cent amount, obviously. If it's $11.99, then each of these contains a figure. Well, what we need to understand also is that if you can imply that this, going back to this example, okay, we know this is a dollar amount. Why? Because the numbers are followed by a period. The period signifies 0, 0, okay, even. So you don't have to carefully put in a pair of zeros, you just put a period there. That's all there is to it. But you don't have to put a period if you're selling fine satin. Okay, we know this is not 69 cents, don't we? Just from context. So we give the reader a little bit of credit for being smart. This was kind of a smart thing on my part. I don't know if you can see this. It says blasters, intrusive, annoying, obnoxious, $289. Okay, we don't need the period there. It's clear enough. So you stop while you're ahead, and here's another one, no period and no underscore. I use this little space under the 99 to write 750 milliliters. The term Gothic is no longer used in the sign trade. It's been replaced by the term block lettering. Okay, a lineal is a letter with no stroke contrast or low stroke contrast. Now, before Gothic was used in the sign trade, a term that's now really, really antiquated called Egyptian was used. And you'll see this in old sign manuals. To use Egyptian today would be like referring to an automobile as a horseless carriage. People here, what are you talking about? Okay, it does not apply. Okay, it's antiquated, it's obsolete. So that's what I meant by antiquated. You will see the word Gothic used in lettering books, but for the most part, we don't say that. We don't say pantalones anymore. Okay, we say pants. Okay, things get shortened over time and made more intelligible. So the word block is used not only in the profession, but it's understood by the layman, and that facilitates communication. Other questions? Now, you're beginning to understand this is a formula, right? This is a tradition, it's a formula. It's based on expediency, on visual impact, on a lot of things that have been thought out for generations and generations and generations. You can't really put a new spin on this and expect an improvement. No. No, it has evolved. Now, I'm giving you alphabets that I have let evolve a little bit from the old casual styles, but they're still casual. And the little differences that I've introduced are not really mucking with the culture or tradition in any way. They're just putting my little thumbprint on things that have been done for ages. I was lucky that my father took an interest in this kind of thing and collected books on supermarkets, and I could go through these books and see the archival photos of supermarkets that were, founded and built in the 1940s, the 50s, and every once in a while he'd see an example and show it to me, and faintly suggest that he'd like me to try that, which is a good idea. Okay, so the next week, Wednesday, new prices go up, the new specials go up. So I had a studio at the store. It used to be in the upstairs of the store, and then it was in a separate building. Tuesday, all day, I would do, over the course of 8 hours or so, 16 signs. 12 of them original, and the other 4 trace-offs. So clean sheet of paper over the sign I just did, and no need to lay out a new. I just do it with the brush wet and keep going. So I would say that if you want to keep your hand in this, do around 100 a year, and you'll stay in practice. That's been enough. In recent years, I haven't quite kept that pace, but you'll see today I can still, move like grease lightning. Okay, in the back, we have a question.
What about the rules regarding graphics? Do you try to avoid graphics?
No pictures. This is not Trader Joe's. Okay, we want to sell the stuff, not just picture it. Okay, no, a picture is no good on this kind of stuff. Not even the simplest is ever been used because it takes too much time. And, if you're in the sign trade, especially working at the journey level, that qualification means that your boss has to pay you scale. Okay? He's not going to put up with you like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to put some stars on here, or, some confetti, or do this. Forget it, Get it done, and I want to collect. So, understand economics. Yes?
How much do they charge for a sign or for a bunch of signs?
Well, it depends on how good you are. I mean, if you're just a beginner, you can't afford to charge what a journeyman is charging. But I would say, conservatively speaking, for the 2x3 sign with average copy that you're going to be able to do in maybe 45 minutes, $10. Okay, so that's maybe $15 an hour you're earning. I can easily make 60 doing this, and I've never really focused on the price because I just take groceries and beer out of the store and say, yeah, we're even. So that's the way my boss in Longview, Washington, a guy who was very, very good at this stuff, he trained me at age 18, and we were doing signs for the supermarket that you could see out the back window of the shop, and he was taking out a full cart of groceries in exchange for that. And I don't think they were even looking at how much meat and the expensive stuff he was taking. But in those days, you could just work out these deals with friends. And we would do both 2x3s and 3x4s. The 3x4s were more popular because you could see them from farther away. And I remember not being able to tell my work from my boss's work from our shop. But you get up to the grocery store and see the brushwork, and his was just so smooth and slick. I mean, it just total pro, and mine was fussy, just careful, trying to make everything perfect and follow that line. Well, you couldn't see that from across the parking lot or across the street. Okay, so I was wasting my time. So Shelley was always saying to me, okay, thin your paint, go faster, work both sides of the brush. Now, the banner brush is a tool you don't see very much these days. Okay, but when I say you work both sides of the brush, you dip it in the paint, you bring it down this way, and then there's paint on the other side, and then you do the upstroke. You turn the brush over. Okay, it's this wrist action. Now, I'm holding the brush at the thickest part of the handle, and that's where you're going to want to hold it because you don't have good control yet. But if you get really fast at this, you can almost do it in your sleep. Okay, it comes that naturally after a while. It's a dance. Okay, it's choreographed. Again, very, very formulaic. You cannot expect to just kind of learn this on your own or go through old show card books and pick this up. No, you need someone to teach you. So once I went away to college, I wasn't doing this kind of lettering much anymore. When I finished college, I got to Des Moines, fell right back into it because the shop where I worked, that was their specialty. So I would say that grocery store paper signs, window signs, that has been the continuous thread through my career. I've had show card, gold leaf, art for reproduction, camera ready, lettering, all that kind of stuff. But the most consistent task has been this grocery store stuff, and it's all because of just pure dumb luck. My family got into the grocery business. So, you know, I was the guy who took care of their signs. So not everybody can claim to have that fortune or to have started so early after learning brush lettering in schools. It's really tragic that so many of the vocational arts are not offered in public schools anymore. But I took drafting in junior high. Speedball lettering and metal shop and wood shop, and I knew how to run a lathe, a bandsaw, all that stuff. Kids used to learn this, but you know now you're starting late and through no fault of your own. So I'm going to try to make up for lost time and cram all this information into you for like 7 hours and see how it goes. Okay, do we want to take a little break, or are you ready for, if you're not tired of hearing me talking, I will talk about layout now. Layout. Again, I should say that these numerals are about 60% the size of this, and the whole thing is about 60% of the usable format. So that percentage, 60, keep that in mind. If I make disparaging remarks about YouTube, don't think ill of me, because these modern masters, as they call themselves, are basically nitwits with a video cam. And they have no business pretending that they know this stuff. They think they're good. They have followers who tell them they're good. There are no naysayers out there except for me, and of course, you know, that gives me a bad reputation. But I can honestly say that there is more garbage out there on YouTube and Vimeo and so forth than there is good stuff. And you don't know the good stuff unless you actually speak to a person who is in that lineage, okay, and didn't make it up or didn't try to piece together a career from various sources. No, if you want to learn this, you have to learn it from a specialist, an authority on the subject. And okay, I've been doing it for 50 years. That might give me a claim to some expertise. I'm not the only guy who ever did this well. No. The old timers, especially the guys working shoulder to shoulder at the bench and doing it day after day, they're way faster than I ever got. Okay, and good looking letters too. But they had the formula. They had it down. And it was like watching a good salsa dancer. I mean, how can you remember all those steps and all those moves? It just seems mind-boggling. But once you get into it and you start to really hear the music, it becomes a lot easier. So fluid paint, making the brush do what it can without forcing the brush. Things like that. It's kind of a zen thing.
Yes, I've seen many signs made with big, large marker.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
The guys who do it well, especially in like Mexico City, they're amazing. Amazing. Now, they get a lot of things wrong. For example, we use Arabic numerals. We cannot expect to apply the Roman lettering structure to our figures. And what those guys get wrong is they make a 5 with the thin stroke here. Okay, that's not a 5. The 5 has the flag as the thick. Like that. So this is pretty much the Whole Foods misunderstanding. They have a standard alphabet that they use, okay, and they always get the 2, the 5, and the 7 wrong. Okay, this should be thick, this should be thick, and this should be thick. But in a lineal, it really doesn't matter that much. You see it to a certain extent here. See what I'm talking about? How the neck is thinner than the flag? Here it's about the same. Low stroke contrast is what you want in these letters. So what I was trying to remember was also has to do with introducing a spot of color for interest. And you can take great liberties with different shapes down here. That's one you can use. Okay. If you want one that's smiling instead of frowning, do that. Fill the space with another accent color. Now we always use dark colors for the lettering and the numbers, and we use light color for any trim. Like if you choose to give this some kind of quick contour outline, that's got to be yellow on white paper, or light green, or light blue, not black. That just makes the edge fuzzy. So the colors we're using today are ultra blue, fire red, and yellow. We're also going to use black for a center line. A center line is this. There's your 9, say in blue or red, and black is going to cover either of those. So you just put in the center line like that, and it's a quick second color for very little time investment, and it makes the letter look like it has a real living skeleton. If you were to shade it, this just takes too long. This is what your boss is not going to pay for. It's taking me as long to shade this letter as it took me to draw the whole thing. So forget about the shade. It's not efficient. It doesn't pay. Again, when we mist in a color, and I like to do this, say we have a word like salad. And so forth. Here's the baseline. I put a piece of cardstock right along here, okay, and then I spray so that we have some background color along this edge, and it follows across. And I think we have some spray paint here, so we can try this. You can also mist in the whole background. That's just what I mean about misting or spotting.
Would you do that before?
Yeah, that has to be done before. So this is what I do. I fan the brush out, okay, and then I pull down and decrease the pressure a little bit.
All right.
I work on the counter, fan it out. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that.
A little bit of a twist, and it works best if the brush is nearly empty. Work with the other counter, other side of the counter, across and down. You see where I'm grabbing the brush, right?
Yeah, way up. At
Yep.
the top.
Now, if I want to work off the tip of the brush for a lighter letter, I can make it go really fast. Yeah, that got out of control there. Try that again. Take two.
So you're just sort of getting it to the end and whipping it
Mm-hmm.
to the right? Or,
It's a full stop and a lift.
okay. Full stop.
Yep.
More typing and stuff. Just asking, what kind of brush do you use for paper signs? The magic brush, right?
You need to give this a little more emphasis. So, the brush is behaving.
Yeah, it looks
Now,
great.
now make it work, would you?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Doing a great job. You're doing a great job. I mean, you're a natural for this. Come on, face it.
Is it someone else?